زهرا وأنت العبير الذي بك كم كان وقتي يطيب أهديك عطرا وأنت النفيس من
I think really we're all entering this month, particularly over what we've witnessed globally in the last couple of years, with some element of unresolved grief. And that's just limiting it to...
And that's exacerbated, locally, right? With what we are seeing happen and unfold even locally. The marginalization of the Muslim community, the targeted, Islamophobia, discrimination, it's everywhere.
Yeah, and that's just in the, the advocacy space. Let's take a look at the everyday reality of people, in this time of the year. We've got people still suffering from, financial crisis, cost of living is exponential, basic things like rent, food, being able to stay on top of bills. People are really struggling. And then I think about the number of women that are entering this month having lost a loved one, whether it be through death or divorce, whether it's a child or a spouse or a parent. We are literally walking into this month burdened with the pain that grief brings. And we haven't really mastered the art of a community of going back to caring for people who are carrying that grief load, and understanding and appreciating that everyone carries their grief differently because their relationship with the person that they loved and that they lost was very unique to them. So having, a lens of mercy, being kind to people in that grief, not imposing your unsolicited advice on, how they should just move on or get over it, or, why are you still visiting the cemetery, or why are you still thinking about them? I think we really just need to say less and listen more. And for the women that are walking into Ramadan carrying that grief, have some rahmah on yourself and name it. Name the grief that you're feeling. I've just lost my son. I'm entering this month of Ramadan without the comfort and advice of my mother. I've just recently lost my father. Connect with the loss, because just, again, we spoke about how fast-paced society is. Everyone and everything is telling you, tuck it aside,
carry on
and move on. And that's just not what the heart wants. No. Our soul grieves this, on another level. Our heart yearns for a connection with what we've lost. And we have to honor it and we have to name it, because if you don't feel it, it catches up with you later on down the track.
And then how to channel that grief into something that will benefit you. And I ask every single, starting off with me, we're all carrying some element of, burden, grief, going through trials and tribulations. Pour your heart out this month. And because we get overwhelmed, going back to the mental load, I know personally, I enter the month of Ramadan with so much to ask for, and then yet sometimes I go through mental blanks, wallahi, even in sujood. When I'm so desperate, I desperately need to be asking Allah for things, but I forget. And so this is now the time, and it's never too late. I know planning for Ramadan should start 6 months before, but it's never too late. If I don't write things down, I forget. Do you believe it? Even if I've run out of milk at home, I need to write it down. Otherwise, I forget to buy it on the way home.
There's just so much going on. Yeah.
Write what you are so desperate for by way of du'a, whether it's on your phone or in a book, whatever it is, write it down and reflect and refer to that every single day. What grief are you carrying? What do you want to ask of Allah? Where do you want to see that loved one end up? In Jannah, Jannat al-Firdaus. You want Allah to reunite you with them. That's the du'a that you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. If you have someone who's going through a severe illness, right, and they are at end of life, this is a du'a that you ask of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how do you channel that grief into something that is so powerful for us as believers?
And practical.
And practical in the month of Ramadan. And also this concept of mercy. Enter the month with full yaqeen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in fact the most merciful. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Do not despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mercy starts with yourself, but also knowing that your Creator, who loves you most, Al-Wadud, the most loving, is not going to withhold His mercy towards you or your loved ones if that is what you are asking of Him.
That is beautiful.
So ask away. We enter, and I listened to this during Sheikh Bilal Asad's talk. فإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب. If my servant asks of me, tell him or tell them that I am close. And we don't really internalize the depth of this particular verse, which is connected to Ramadan, subhanAllah. Allah is always close. Don't ever, ever withhold. And I had a particular sister, subhanAllah, ask me at a halaqah 2 weeks ago, I feel embarrassed to keep asking Allah things. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Don't ever feel embarrassed. Don't ever feel ashamed. You cannot actually ask of Allah of anything and have doubt that He will not or will answer. You have to have certainty that your du'a, inshallah, is accepted.
In fact, that's reserved for the creation.
Yes.
You know, you get to a point where you can't ask your mother for anything anymore. You can't ask your spouse for anything anymore. You can exhaust those people and feel ashamed, but that's never the case with Allah.
No, and you have to enter with that mindset. So for anyone who's going through any pain, grief, and we are all carrying that, whatever, locally, personally, globally, enter this month with certainty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close. He's waiting. He wants to hear of you the very things that you want to ask for, and note them down, because I'm telling you, you will forget. I forget. Note them down from now and have what you call your du'a list. And it's always beautiful to reflect on that du'a list a year or 2 years later and just tick away what Allah may have answered. That's so reassuring at times, subhanAllah.
That's a beautiful thing. Keep that Ramadan du'a journal and then reflect on it years later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and sometimes what you were asking for is not exactly what you got. Allah Azza wa Jal gave you something better. Yeah, subhanAllah. Even from a grief perspective, I think there are some practical things that we can do to continue to love and honor our person long after they've passed away. I had this mother who lost her child, and this was a few years back. And one of the things that brought her comfort was still maintaining, a plate and a place for him on the table, even though she knew he was never going to sit there. But for her, it brought her comfort that the memory of her son still remains in the house.
And people sharing that memory
for her. Yeah,
I think the worst thing you can do is just tread around and pretend this person didn't exist.
That's right. So people were still comfortable bringing up his name, mentioning the fact that he was there and that we miss him and that we love him. And essentially, that is what grief is. It's love with no place to go. Yeah. So whatever it is that's going to continue to allow you to connect with your loved one, then by all means do it. And of course, we know that we can, make a donation in their name and start a Sadaqah Jariyah project, perform Hajj or Umrah on their behalf. But it's the everyday things that keep that connection and their memory alive that there's no shame in doing. And we need to support our loved ones when they take that step to say, you know what, I don't want to move on. I don't want to forget them. This is how I'm going to choose to remember that person.
Without judgment. Don't judge anyone who's got, gone through some severe hardship such as that. It's a difficult one, subhanAllah, and just be there to support.
أهديك زهرا وأنت العبير الذي بك كم كان وقتي يطيب